Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining today to hear from our Assistant Secretary of State, Lee Satterfield. My name is Jennifer Clinton. I'm the CEO of Cultural Vistas and the chair of the Alliance Board. So on behalf of the entire Alliance, just want to welcome all of you. We had a great turnout today. We're expecting about 400 people who have registered, and we appreciate your patience as we've had to reschedule a couple times. And as you know, as normal, we hear from the ECA Assistant Secretary in person at a reception right before our annual Advocacy Day. This year certainly was a little bit different in that Advocacy Day was virtual and had to move this meeting, but we're really happy to bring everybody together. And just as a recap from our Advocacy Day back in March, we had 92 people participating in 110 meetings with congressional offices from 27 states. So that was really a great turnout, and thank you all for taking part in that. As you know, among the range of issues that our participants talked about was the critical importance of increased funding for exchange programs, the need to modernize the visa application processing, and our ongoing efforts to support and rebuild our Bridge USA programs. We're very thankful for the partnership with the Assistant Secretary and her team at ECA as we tackle these issues together, and we look forward to hearing her thoughts about ECA's focus as we all rebuild our programs together. So here today to introduce the Assistant Secretary, we have with us a good friend and leader of our industry, Ambassador Stuart Holliday, who is the CEO of Meridian International, where Ms. Satterfield was recently the president and COO. Meridian runs a number of programs connecting leaders through culture and collaboration to drive solutions for global challenges. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Holliday.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Alir. Welcome, Assistant Secretary. I just was thinking about this introduction, and I was reflecting on usually during a presidential transition, somebody in our community says, does anyone know the new Assistant Secretary for ECA? And we don't have that problem in this case. And instead of doing a typical introduction going through her illustrious career, I thought I would sort of use the analogy as if we were to create a focus group within the Alliance of what the perfect Assistant Secretary of State for ECA would look like, what qualities would they have? And let's just see how they match up. So the first thing you'd want is a true believer in the power of exchange between people and culture, check. A deep knowledge of the State Department, so not a learning curve there. How the State Department functions, the intricacies of that wonderful building where I spent some of my career, but also specifically the Bureau. I think Lee might be the only Assistant Secretary, I could be wrong, that previously served as a Deputy Assistant Secretary in the same Bureau. And you normally don't get that in a Bureau, State Department, unless you're in the regional bureaus where you might, but that's truly an advantage. The third is you'd hope that they'd have some familiarity with this group called MPAAs, right? The partners. And in Lee's case, having led one, she comes to the job with the knowledge of what those organizations bring to the table and how to work with them. All of our strengths and weaknesses, she knows everything. And so she is terrific from that respect. You'd want a great manager of people and resources, right? That is not an insignificant part of the job. That means making sure the money is well spent, the people are happy, and they feel motivated and part of a mission and part of a cause, and we have that in Lee. It wouldn't hurt if the Assistant Secretary had a personal relationship and friendship with the Secretary of State and the President of the United States. That would be an asset to the job. Finally, you would want an Assistant Secretary in an ideal world, this is pretty rare, to have bipartisan relationships on both sides of the aisle in the Congress, right? But I think most importantly, in addition to all those attributes, what you want in an Assistant Secretary for ECA is somebody who understands America, somebody who's from the grassroots, somebody who grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and knows how Americans think and what they hope for, and the ability to translate the importance of exchanges into plain English and into a context where average great American citizens can see the benefit of all these programs. So I just wanted to say, if we were designed the perfect assistant secretary in a focus group and came up with all those different criteria, there's only one name. There's only one name that would have all of those characteristics, and it's our Assistant Secretary, Lee Satterfield. So thank you, Lee, for being here.
Wow, Stuart. Well, no surprise, you've stolen the show with that wonderful, wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. I need to, before I get into the meat of the remarks, just say a quick word about Stuart. Some of you may or may not know that he was recently bestowed the highest honor of the French government from President Macron, the Legion of Honor, awarded to him by the ambassador, highest honor for an American citizen. And I had the privilege of attending that ceremony with tears in my eyes as I watched him receive the pin. And it's just a tribute to the diplomat that Stuart has been throughout his career. And having served in the Bush White House, at the UN as ambassador, then as the CEO and president of Meridian, where I had the privilege of serving as his second in command. I think there's no better diplomat and advocate for the work that we do than Stuart serving at Meridian, and I'm thrilled that he's still at the helm. Also, I think that the fact that he brought me in to Meridian, having served in two previous Democratic administrations, I was in the Clinton White House and also the Obama State Department. It really speaks to how these programs really do have strong, intense bipartisan support. And that's the strong role that the Alliance plays in making sure that continues to be the case. But I think that's such an important part of the work that we do and how we'll continue to make what we do relevant. And I'll speak to that today. Before I get into that, I also want to say a word of thanks to Alir Zerka. Speaking of the Clinton administration, we had the privilege of working together back in the Clinton White House. We were both really, really young. We were still in high school. I'm kidding. That I just say that because it makes me feel old to talk about the fact that we worked together in the Clinton White House. And we were colleagues back then and friends, and we remain connected over the years. And when I was asked by the president to serve in what I think is the most important role in all of federal government, there was no stronger advocate and supporter than Alir and all of the member organizations of the Alliance and all of our partner network. And that just meant so much to me. And again, shows the strength of these programs over the course of administrations and how it is so directly tied to the United States developing a more prosperous and peaceful world. And the role that the Alliance and Alir plays in that is striking. It has been noted that we've canceled this a couple of times. That is completely on me. I had a couple of personal unfortunate situations where I had to cancel, but I raise it because I want to make sure that no one believes it's any indication of how I feel about the Alliance or any of the members or the partner organizations, because I am the strongest supporter of all that you do, and I hope that you know that. You all know that the Bureau's mission is to create mutual understanding between people in the United States and people all around the world. And I actually like to say, simply put, we bring foreign policy to life. And the Alliance and all of you as individuals and organizations play a critical role in making that happen. I'm keenly aware that the last 2 years have been especially challenging. And the impact of COVID-19 that had on all of our efforts and each of you, we're all continuing to come out of it. And I want to thank you for your innovative approach and everyone's willingness to try new things, pivoting to virtual in a time that it was not something that we had done across all of the programs. And collectively, I think we still connected people all across the world virtually, and that was very impressive. I want to announce that one thing that I really want to do is I want to bring the partner organizations together in person to have a dialogue. This was suggested to me by one of your member organizations not long ago, to share best practices and lessons learned about the last 2 years. And I'd like to bring everyone together and have a conversation so that we can talk about what worked, what didn't work, how we improve, and how we take our work now to this hybrid space and keep what was good about virtual while we get back to ramping up our efforts around the people-to-people in-person exchanges, which is obviously the goal because there is no substitute for in-person programming. But as Secretary Blinken said to me, which may have been day one of the job, take the lessons learned and pivot so that we can grow our impact by reaching more audiences, more diverse audiences, by doing virtual components and being able to keep and remain that important in-person part of the work. So I think the best way to do that and to take the Secretary's directive is to have a conversation with all of you about it. So look forward. Be looking for an invitation to get together at some point, hopefully this summer, so that we can have a little bit of ability to do some things outside. So with that said, what I really want to talk about is how we approach public diplomacy in today's society with an eye toward the future. With new leadership in the White House, President Biden and Vice President Harris, and also here at ECA, I want to share more about our strategy and our tactics and our end goals. So whether it's in academic exchanges, culture and professionals, or our very important Bridge USA exchanges, we must do it all. And so we have recently completed our Bureau's strategic planning, and hopefully we've shared that with you. And we worked hard to come up with a document that is not the typical thick notebook that sits on a shelf that no one actually reads, but we put it in a more condensed version so that you could quickly see our 3 goals and be able to better understand exactly what we're driving toward as we go about our work. And I would like to speak to those now if I could. So the first goal of our strategy really embodies the heart of what we do in ECA, and that's to further our foreign policy objectives. advance democratic principles, and promote mutual understanding. That's been the core of ECA's work from the very, very beginning, and it remains core to this day. In the very first major speech for Secretary Blinken, he said, and I quote, in a foreign policy for the American people, he stated, "We'll work with Congress whenever we can on the takeoff, not just the landing, because they represent the will of the people, and our foreign policy is stronger when the American people support it." And I think that speaks directly to the alliance and the work that we all do, and communicating the importance of our work to all audiences, including Congress. So to accomplish that goal, we're really looking to engage in 4 key areas. 1, Americans all across the United States. 2, obviously foreign audiences, with the intent to increase international student mobility, critical, particularly coming out of COVID-19. 3rd is engaging partner organizations. And I hope that those who have heard me speak before in other venues or at other times, and one of the first engagements I had was with the Alliance board. It was one of the first conversations I had when I became Assistant Secretary. This is an important key point. If we're not collectively figuring out how to achieve our objectives, our joint objectives, then we're working in silos and not strengthening and reinforcing one another, and that would just be a mistake. So it is a critical element to me, and I hope that you all know that. 4th, ECA has always done this, but I think we're doubling down in this area, and that's to reach underserved and underrepresented communities, both in the US, but also all around the world. And Stuart mentioned that I am from a region of the world that, or a country that is often left out, I guess, of some of these opportunities. And just for the fact that I grew up in a small town in Greenville, South Carolina, I did not know about the opportunities to study abroad and have the chance that some of you have had and that our participants have had. And so I approach this in a way to think about, when I was in high school, how could I have found out about these kinds of programs to be involved and to apply for? So I think every day about how I'm going to reach my high school self to make sure that there's opportunity for people, and to include a wide range of people from underrepresented and diverse, including geographical diversity, from communities all over the world, and including the United States. And then the 5th area of engagement is the oh so important alumni. And what I just had this thought, but Alir, one thing that might be interesting, our alumni office has done an incredible job in standing up new platforms, and we just launched a new way to capture information on a Salesforce platform. It might be interesting to do a session with the Alliance and have our ECA alumni office come and share the work that they've done. We just did a briefing within the State Department to share with our regional bureaus and functional bureaus that level of work, and it's very impressive when you see it. And in the meeting, someone said, are we talking to all the partner organizations? And I know that in some cases we are, but maybe not in every case, but maybe that's something that the Alliance could help us do. Because the continued engagement in alumni is something that Congress often asks me about. I was asked in my hearing about it, and something that we think about all the time at ECA. So the second goal really begins to move away from the why really to the how. And what I mean by that is working to increase professional skills of emerging and established leaders in the United States and across the world to address global challenges. So I like to think about this goal as sort of a heavily focused on a skills building effort, and also more policy connected outcomes. So we will expand our educational and professional development programs. We will also tackle the ability to identify disinformation, and that's it by advancing English learning programs. So, right, this is obvious, but I'll repeat it. The more people have the ability to read and speak English, the more they can get information from other sources, and they can decide for themselves what they believe by being able to find information that they value as a trusted source. So English learning is a big component of our disinformation work. Also, media literacy, and you all know that that's been a key component of ECA's programming for a very long time. And then teaching critical thinking skills is a important component as well. In the areas of policy for this administration, there are three key, they're not the only ones, but there are three very important in our priority areas, which are STEM, global health, and climate. Just a word on, I'll use an example of how we're leaning into one of these, and that's in the area of STEM. And I'm sure everyone who participates in the J1 visa programs, the Bridge USA programs, were probably a part of this announcement. We worked very closely with the White House Office of Science and Technology to announce two new programs in the J1 for STEM. And that was one, to extend the amount of time that a scholar can continue their study in the United States. So it went from 18 to 36 months. And the second piece of that was to encourage the U.S. private sector to host J1 visa exchange visitors in the STEM category. I think most of you know that that has typically been a category that those participants are mainly in academic institutes and college universities, et cetera, and it really hasn't been utilized by the private sector. So we announced with OSTP that we would be reaching out to the American private sector to encourage participation. And I think, I don't know, maybe 50 US companies have signed up so far, and that's just been an amazing program overseen by Deputy Assistant Secretary Nicole Elcon, who has also returned to ECA, having served when Evan Ryan was the Assistant Secretary. And so she's back. We're so lucky to have her. She's been leading the engagement on that side. And I know the Alliance works most closely with her in the private sector realm. And she's just, I can't tell you how lucky we are to have her in that seat. She's doing incredible work and was able to quickly get this announced and done. And I think the president and the secretary often talk about one of the U.S. most valuable assets is our private sector, and being able to include private sector and come up with valuable partnerships and including this vehicle to allow them to host is very creative and just a good idea. So I was thrilled that we were able to to see that through. And hopefully many of you many of you on this call are taking part of that as sponsors of that program, and hopefully being connected already to the private sector, those who are signed up. So the third goal of the Bureau's strategy is to really, this is more of an internal focused goal, but it includes all of you, and that's to build a more forward-leaning ECA that is more resilient, effective, and diverse. So important, but also speaks to our the most important thing that we do, and that is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of program participants. And that's really at the front and center of everything that we do. That's the number one. And so I think we're finding ways to better deliver on that number one priority by better utilizing tech and data to measure and to engage with people directly, and to be able to support partner organizations, and when you're communicating directly with participants, to make sure that we're getting information to you and we're receiving information in the way that we need to support across the board when people are here in the United States and traveling in other countries. And we're committed, of course, to increasing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, both in our programs and in our workforce. And we have many initiatives that we're launching in order to do that. Lastly, I'll just say something about an important component that really the Alliance does really well, and that's storytelling. It's our best asset, if you will, because we can talk all day about exchange, J1 visa, this program, that program. We can roll out our acronyms, but as soon as you tell a story about the impact and how a life was changed, or a decision was made, or there was shared peace, prosperity across the board from an individual, as soon as you tell that personal story, it comes to life for everyone, whether it's on the Hill, in the media, inside this building, in your own organization, talking to your next door neighbor. The second you use storytelling to convey the importance of our work, you've got an understanding from someone about what it is exactly that we do. And that hasn't been easy, but I think that we continue to lean in on how we're being better storytellers and utilizing the good, wonderful, rich stories of participants to convey the importance of our work is something that you play a vital role in, and I want to thank you for that. Lastly, just a word about something that is probably on your minds for the program participants, given that we're trying to come out of COVID-19. I'm knocking on wood. We're trying to come out of it, although it continues to want to create a new variant and continue to, but if there are less hospitalizations, I think we can get back to a level of in-person that is safe. As we're ramping back up, I know that moving people to the United States and to other countries, particularly to the United States, remains tough. And that when there are other countries and places where our consular affairs operations are either limited, they have fewer spots for interviews, or we just can't have the number of bodies in the office as we would have pre-pandemic. That can be very frustrating for everyone. But I want to assure you that the new Assistant Secretary for Consular Affairs is phenomenal. And anytime I've brought directly to her an issue for our J1 programs, she is incredibly responsive. She's a wonderful partner. She was confirmed right before I was, so she has not been in the job very long, but we now have agreed to do regular meetings between the two of us so that we can continue to raise issues at the highest level to resolve them quickly where we can, or communicate clearly where we can't. And she's an amazing ally and partner in doing that. And I know that it can be frustrating, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be the Assistant Secretary for Consular Affairs. I could not do that job because it is really tough, but I want to assure you that she's an amazing partner. And I know that Nicole Alcon had a webinar, I think it was a webinar not that long ago, and Consular Affairs attended and was able to communicate directly on a number of issues that were on your mind. And I just bring that up because in opportunities like this, we usually only focus on the things that I want to say and what I want to communicate, my 3 goals, et cetera. But I want you to know that I am an active listener, and that I've heard that as a struggle of years, and that we are doing all that we can to address it, because it's our goal to get back to pre-pandemic numbers for exchange visitors. And we want to not only get back to that level, but we want to increase the number of visitors to the United States. And I think everyone saw in the recent Open Doors report, I guess not that recent now, probably over 6 months ago, but that the United States remains the #1 destination for study, international study, and that's wonderful. But other countries are making a great strides to increase their numbers for international study. I mean, makes sense. And we want to continue to be not only competitive, but the leader in bringing international visitors, particularly on study abroad, to the United States. And we're committed to find ways to ensure student mobility is not a barrier, but it is a way that we can facilitate. Anyway, I'm very optimistic about the future. I am ready to roll up my sleeves. I hope you all know that I do want to continue to partner with all of you. I should have mentioned, I think Jennifer Clinton may have had to jump off the phone. She was kind enough to open up this segment, and I've worked with Jennifer probably as long ago as Alir and I worked together. We met also during the Clinton administration, and she's been a wonderful, wonderful advocate of public diplomacy, and in on it from a lot of different angles, from when she ran Global Ties, when she's been at a couple of organizations now, and also served in government. She's an incredible ally and diplomat as well. And I should have said that while she was still on the Zoom. So I apologize. I'll send her a note and let her know that I thanked her at the closing. I can't thank you enough. Alir, is there anything, or Lainey, that you want me to cover that I didn't in my lengthy remarks?
I don't think so. I think you covered it. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. This has just been such a special treat for us. The exchange community is very much looking forward to our continued partnership and advancing all the important goals that you outlined. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I also want to thank Ambassador Holliday of Meridian International for his great introduction. Loved hearing about that. And we also loved hearing from Jennifer Clinton, as you just said, and we thank her for her welcome remarks as well. And lastly, we thank all of our attendees for joining us today in this special event. And we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.